The sky burned all the time on Varnak 9. It was not a sky of clouds, but of fire, rivers of red smoke pouring from 1,000 chimneys, washing the stars away. The air tasted like metal and ash. The ground shook with the heartbeat of machines that never slept. And somewhere in that endless noise, a child's voice whispered prayers that no god ever heard. My name was Lyra. I was small enough to crawl inside the ducts where grown workers could not fit. That was why they kept me alive. Every day I carried scraps and tools through tunnels that sweated oil and blood. Every night I dreamed of silence, the kind that no longer existed here. I had seen men vanish into the furnaces. Women turned to ash when the overseers grew bored, and still the machines kept moving, as if nothing had happened. If you can still hear this story, if it reaches you through the noise of the warp, remember what happens when mercy dies. Remember what the dark gods make of a world when no one is left to say no. Like this message, send it forward, share it, echo it, before the forge consumes another world. Chapter 1. The Machine's Children. The first thing you learn on Varnak 9 is that nothing here ever sleeps. The machines never stop. The smoke never clears. Even the darkness hums, as if the air itself is made of gears grinding on unseen teeth. I used to wonder if the world was alive, if the metal beneath my bare feet had a pulse. Now I know it does. I can feel it through the floor, a slow, endless heartbeat that keeps time with the furnaces. When I was brought here, I was small enough to fit inside the crate they shipped me in. I remember the smell of the journey, oil, rust, blood, and something sweet that made me dizzy. The others were older, women, men, broken things that still breathed. They called us scraps. The overseers liked that word. They said we were the pieces the Imperium threw away. Every day begins with the same sound, the siren. It wails from somewhere deep in the forges, rising higher and higher until it feels like it will crack your skull open. Then the doors open and the air rushes in, hot, heavy, full of metal dust that sticks to your tongue. That's when the work begins. I crawl through ducts and vents, carrying tools too small for the servitors to use. My hands are always black with soot. My nails cracked long ago. Sometimes the ducts shift while I'm inside them, breathing and shuddering like the lungs of a dying giant. When that happens, I press my ear to the wall and whisper prayers I don't remember learning. Not to the Emperor. No one dares speak his name here. But to the memory of warmth, to the sound of rain, to anything that isn't metal. There are other girls like me. Jessa, who never talks but hums when she's scared. Mara, who steals bits of rations from the overseers when they're drunk. Tiny Sari, who believes every shadow hides angels that have forgotten their wings. We sleep together on the metal floor near the coolant vents because it's the only place not burning hot. We tell stories in whispers about worlds we've never seen, fields, oceans, blue skies. Words that don't mean anything here. The adults barely look at us. Their eyes are dull, their bodies swollen from the fumes. Some have arms made of brass or skin that looks melted to the machines. They don't bleed red anymore. The overseers, half human, half thing, beat them when they slow down. And when one dies, the body disappears into the foundry. No graves, no ashes, just gone. Once I asked what happens to them. An older worker, his face hidden behind a welding mask, said the machines keep what they need. That night I dreamed of furnaces full of faces, all glowing in the firelight, their mouths still moving though no sound came out. Sometimes, when I crawl through the ducts, I hear singing. Not voices, something deeper, like the metal is humming to itself. It's not music, not really. It's more like pain pretending to be a song. I think the world remembers what it used to be before it was taken. Before the chaos marks were carved into its surface. You can see them everywhere. Sigils burned into the walls, engines shaped like mouths, pistons that move like breathing ribs. The world is changing, and so are we. Yesterday, a new shipment arrived. I saw the ships land through the smoke, black hulls shaped like claws, engines howling with warp energy. The overseers gathered around, and for the first time I saw them bow. Not to any human, to something tall, wrapped in chains of fire and iron. I only saw it from a distance, but I felt its gaze pass over us like a blade. Even the machines went silent for a moment. Then it was gone, swallowed by the smoke. That night, Mara said she heard a voice in the vents. It told her to hide, that something was coming. We laughed at her, but when morning came, 2 of the adults were missing. Their bunks empty, their tools left behind. The overseer said they were reassigned to deeper levels. We knew better. Reassigned means consumed. The next day, while I was inside one of the duct tunnels, the metal beneath my palms shivered. For a moment, everything stopped. The machines, the heat, even the air. And then, through the hum, I heard a whisper, soft like a breath. Child. I froze. The ducts are full of voices sometimes. Echoes, air pressure, tricks of the heat. But this one wasn't like that. It knew I was there. Who's there? I whispered. My own voice sounded like a stranger's. The whisper came again, closer this time, like it was inside the metal. Do you want to be free, little one? I couldn't answer. My throat felt tight. I crawled backward until I hit the junction wall, gasping. And then the heat came back, the rumble started, and the world began to move again. But the voice stayed in my head, repeating that one question. Do you want to be free? That night, I didn't tell the others. I just lay awake, staring at the vents above us. Somewhere in the metal, something was listening. And for the first time since I'd arrived on Varnic 9, I started to believe there might be something worse than dying here. Something waiting beneath the furnaces, calling our names. The next day, the overseers pushed us harder than ever. The forges were alive with fire and fury, and we were just small cogs in their endless machinery. I carried coils of hot cable 4 times my size, my arms shaking until my joints ached. The older girls looked at me with quiet admiration. She's small, but she's faster, Jessa whispered, her voice swallowed by the roar of the engines. I didn't feel faster. I felt like I might collapse at any second. Like the world itself might snap me in half. The adults who worked alongside us seemed invisible. Their brass arms clanged against the forges, sparks bouncing across scorched skin. When they fell behind, the overseer struck them with rods that hissed with energy. I learned to look away. It was easier that way. But the sound never left my ears. Flesh tearing, metal screeching, a voice screaming that was neither human nor machine. It followed me everywhere. In the ducts, Mara tugged at my sleeve. She had found a small vent opening near the old exhaust lines. Listen, she whispered, pointing. I pressed my ear to the metal. The hum was different now, deeper, slower, like a heartbeat. It throbbed against my skull, and I felt it travel down my arms and legs. I understood then. The world itself was calling us. Not just us, me. We slept in shifts. Sometimes I would wake before dawn, press to the floor near the coolant vents, and hear the vents sing. It wasn't words, but I knew the machines were speaking. They were old, older than the world, older than the humans who came here first. They remembered everything, and they wanted something. Something small, something quick, something like me. During the day, I learned to hide my fear behind work. I climbed higher than the others, crawling through ducts that the adults could not reach, dragging pieces of machinery across spaces no larger than my body. The overseers watched, but they did not care about small failures. Only large failures drew attention. I survived by being almost invisible, by moving like smoke, by breathing through the smell of burnt metal and fear. One evening, after the sirens had faded, Sari climbed into my arms and whispered, "Do you think the voice will come again?" I held her close, feeling the warmth of her small body against mine, and I nodded. "It's waiting," I said, even though I did not fully believe it. I was not a hero. I was not brave. I was only a child trapped on a world that had forgotten mercy. Then came the first blood. Not ours, but theirs. A group of adults had been trying to repair one of the furnaces, and the overseers decided they were too slow. Sparks flew. The furnace roared. Screams echoed through the tunnels. We pressed ourselves into shadows and watched as the overseers dragged bodies into the fire pits, half of them screaming, half of them silent. I realized then that this was how the world punished weakness, how it reminded us of what awaited if we failed. That night, I stayed awake longer than the others, listening to the ducks hum. The voice returned, softer this time, like it had been watching me work. "Do you want to be free, little one?" I pressed my hand to the metal, feeling the vibration run through my bones. "Yes," I whispered back. My voice sounded small even to me, but I meant it. I wanted freedom more than I wanted sleep, more than I wanted safety, more than I wanted to survive. It was then that I noticed the symbol etched into the duct wall. A spiral, simple and small, carved as if by tiny hands long ago. I didn't understand its meaning, but I traced it with my finger. The metal pulsed under my touch like it recognized me. My heart beat faster, a warning and a promise at the same time. Something was guiding us. Something wanted us to find it. I returned to the floor, where Mara, Jessa, and Sari were huddled together, and I whispered what I had seen. Their eyes widened, their small hands clutching mine. "Do you think it's real?" Mara asked, her voice trembling. I did not answer because I could feel it in the walls, in the hum, in the fire and smoke. Yes, it was real. And soon, it would demand more than just listening. Above us, the furnaces roared, the overseers paced, and the machines never stopped. But somewhere beneath the forges, the world was alive, and it was calling to a small girl who dared to listen. The next morning, the heat in the forges pressed against my skin like a living thing. Every inhale tasted of metal and ash, and sweat burned my eyes. The overseers were already shouting, their voices bouncing off the iron walls and echoing like thunder. We moved as we were told, lifting, dragging, welding, carrying. I felt my fingers blistering under the weight of tools meant for arms 4 times my size. Yet, even in that hell, I noticed the details no adult would see. The tiny fissures in the furnace walls, the way the machinery's hum changed pitch with every pulse of molten metal, the whisper of the air ducts that carried a message just for me. Jessa stumbled beside me, her small legs trembling, but she smiled through the pain. "We can do this," she said, though her voice cracked. I wanted to tell her it wasn't courage that kept us alive. It was hiding, moving like shadows between sparks, holding our breaths when the machines screamed. Yet, when she looked at me, hope burned in her eyes, a fragile fire that I couldn't snuff out even if I tried. By midday, the overseers grew frustrated. One of the adult workers had made a mistake, and the punishment was swift. The rods of sizzling energy cracked across metal and flesh alike. I ducked behind a stack of crates, pressing my face into the cold steel, my ears ringing with screams. My stomach churned. These were people who had once been like us, who had families, who had hopes, and now they were reduced to nothing more than mistakes in a system that demanded perfection. And yet, I began to see the pattern. The machines, the hum, the fire. They were testing us, shaping us. The voice in the ducts had returned, stronger this time, pulsing through the floorboards. Do you see? Do you understand? My fingers tingled where they touched the metal. I nodded to the shadows. Yes, I understood. Not everything that survived on this world was meant to be seen, but it watched. And it was patient. When night fell, we gathered in the corners, small bodies pressed together, listening to the silence of the machines. Mara whispered about running away, about leaving the forges and finding the stars again. I shook my head. The stars were no longer ours. The world had taken that from us. But beneath the forges, through the ducts and the hollow vents, there was another path. One the adults never knew existed. One only we could take. The hum became a song then, or maybe I only imagined it. Each vibration carried warmth and urgency, urging me to move, to climb, to explore the spaces adults could not reach. I traced the metal walls with my fingers, feeling faint grooves and scratches, markings left by those who had gone before. They were small, like ours, like children. Maybe they had listened too. Maybe they had answered. That night, as I curled into the floor near a cooling vent, the sound of the forges receded into a dull murmur. I pressed my ear to the metal, and for the first time I felt not fear, but understanding. The world beneath the chaos, beneath the fire and smoke, was alive. It was ancient, and it had been waiting for someone small, someone clever enough to see it, someone brave enough to follow. Mara's soft breathing beside me reminded me why I had to try. If I listened, if I followed, perhaps there was a way not just to survive, but to change our fate. To take back even a fragment of what we had lost. To be more than cogs in a machine that demanded everything and gave nothing. And so I made a silent promise in the darkness, to the world beneath, to the hum in the ducts, to the tiny spiral carved into the vent walls. I would listen, I would follow, and I would survive. Not just for me, but for all of us. Above, the forges roared into the night, sparks dancing like fireflies across the scorched floor. Below, something ancient waited, patient and silent, ready to guide the smallest of hands. And I, a child in a world too vast, too cruel, dared to reach toward it.